Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Elsevier Pierre Fabre partner webinar on modeling strategies to guide the choice of clinical doses for antibody-drug conjugates. Now, before we dive in, let me first start with some housekeeping comments. First, we would recommend to watch the presentation in full screen mode, and please make sure your audio is turned on. Then, second, during the webinar, you have the possibility to ask questions by typing these into the Ask a Question box, and we will address any questions at the end of the webinar. And in case of time limitations, we will address any unanswered questions by email. Further, you can access these slides and other links that we mentioned throughout the webinar through the attachment section that you will find below your viewing screen. And with these kind of housekeeping comments, I would like to introduce Olivier Barberin, who is Director of Translational Medicine at Elsevier, which will provide further introduction. Olivier?
Yeah, thanks, Marnix, for this kind intro. Yeah, so I would like to discuss with you guys a bit about why we did this webinar, why we are doing that one with Julie from Pierre Fabre, and the goal there it was that this webinar was taking place there because we had these partnerships between Pierre Fabre, of course, and other pharma companies to develop a DDI risk calculator. So this DDI risk calculator will be released soon by, I would say, beginning of December, based on the feedback of Julie in this case and other partners that you can see in the screen in terms of pharma companies. You can see that we have a very good feedback on this product there, and this is really the joint development that we are looking into when we are developing product or drugs, not drugs, sorry, when we are developing tools that will support the drug development. And this is really great to have this type of relationships, and this is why we are working with Julie and Pierre Fabre to make this product, I would say, live soon, and also something that can support the drug development in terms of DDI predictions. So it was really great to work with partners and with Julie, and this is why we said, okay, why not doing some joint webinar together in this case, and this is why we invited Julie to discuss about how she can support the drug development in terms of ADCs in this case. And first of all, I would like to introduce a bit Julie Derry-Vaucanel. She had a PhD in pharmacognosy and chemistry of natural products. She was graduating in 2007, and then she joined afterwards Galapagos, in this case, in Romainville near Paris. And she was driving a different type of initiative in this company, so working on the design and evaluation of preclinical and clinical DMPK studies, predicted and evaluating drug-drug interaction, of course, was involved in different type of analysis and modeling and simulation of clinical PK data, and so on. And after having spent some years in Galapagos, she joined in 2017 Pierre Fabre as a PK/PD project lead, and she was working on different projects at Pierre Fabre by coordinating the development of PK/PD modeling and to optimize delivery, dosing, and safety. And today, Julie will discuss about what Marnix said before, the model-based strategy to guide the choice of clinical dose and antibody drug conjugate. So Julie, the floor is yours now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Olivier, for the nice introduction, and thank you, Marnix, for setting up this webinar. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I am pleased to present the work that has been done in our PK/PD department at Pierre Fabre. Indeed, mathematical modeling and simulation were employed with preclinical and clinical data. Models were built in order to characterize safety and efficacy in patients and to support the selection of dose and regimen during the clinical development of our ADC, which is named WO101. I just want to say that I'm the presenter today, but this was a multi-hand music sheet with Laurence Delfrari and Aurélie Pétain as modelers. So up, forward, okay. For the ones who don't know that much about ADC, I will briefly introduce this class of therapeutics, and then I will present our WO101 ADC in terms of construct and pharmacology. And then I will present the characteristics of the main models that were developed and how we use them to support our decision process within Pierre Fabre. Okay, oops. So regarding the antibody-drug conjugate, therapy with this ADC represents an important class of targeted therapeutics in cancer medicine. The goal is to maximize the delivery of the cytotoxic to the tumor tissue while minimizing its delivery to normal tissues. It should result in achieving maximum efficacy with a minimal toxicity. So the ADC constructs, as you can see on the draw, are composed of three well-defined components. In green, you have the monoclonal antibody, which targets a specific antigen on the surface of the cancer cell in a green light. There is a linker in orange that binds the monoclonal antibody to the third component in yellow here. In yellow, the payload that is generally a potent small molecule cytotoxic agent. There is roughly two types of cytotoxic agents. The one are targeting the microtubule as indicated, and the other one targeting DNA. Regarding the linker, the chemical stability is a critical factor influencing the kinetic of release of the payload. There is two categories of linkers, the non-cleavable and the cleavable, both with varied degrees of stability, depending on how the payload will be released. So either by catabolism reaction for the non-cleavable ones, or by deconjugation of the linker for the cleavable. So as mentioned, the ADCs should enable selective delivery of a highly cytotoxic drug to tumor cells while minimizing systemic toxicity. This should allow providing a broader therapeutic window, as indicated on the picture, and improve clinical benefit to patients. However, to date, this ideal has been difficult to achieve in cancer medicine, as ADCs often induce severe hematological toxicities. The mechanism of action of an ADC involves the binding of the monoclonal antibody to specific antigens on the surface of the tumor cell, and then it's followed by the endocytosis of the complex. Upon internalization, the drug or its metabolites in yellow here are released in the lysosomal space based on the nature of the linker chemistry as mentioned just before. The released drug can either bind to its pharmacological target, the microtubules or the DNA, and elicit cytotoxic effects. The cytotoxic can also be effluxed out of the cell, and depending on the membrane permeability, it can diffuse and kill the neighboring cells via the so-called bystander effect. ADCs are generally an heterogeneous mixture consisting of various fractions of ADCs with different ratio of drug to antibody, called the DAR, as represented with increased number of cytotoxics here, and often a small amount of unconjugated antibody, the first one you can see here. The PK, the pharmacokinetic characterization of ADCs, requires simultaneous understanding of the disposition of all the three molecular species which are represented in the form and different bioanalytical measurements. As represented here, you have first in blue the payload and derivatives released from catabolism and or metabolism reaction. The total antibody in dark green that consists of both conjugated and unconjugated monoclonal antibodies, and in light green, the total ADC that accounts only for the monoclonal antibody conjugated to the cytotoxics. The formation of ADA, the anti-drug antibody, also needs to be followed in patient samples. The typical PK profile of total ADC and total MAB are generally similar to those of other antibody-based therapeutics. As you can see here, the maximum blood concentration are achieved at the end of the infusion following an IV administration. And in addition, a multi-exponential decline in concentration with terminal half-life in the range of days are typically observed. Elimination is partly driven by the TMDD, the target-mediated drug disposition, with potential impact of the tumor burden. This results generally in a non-linear PK below target saturation and is generally observed at the lowest dose. The PK of the total ADC is generally superimposed with the total MAD, as seen on the PK profile here, and is an indication of stability of the construct. Regarding the payload, due to the target-driven and the local payload release, its level is generally very low in the systemic circulation and is around 2 to 3 logs below the total ADCs. Research on ADCs started 40 years ago, and over these years, close to 200 ADC reached clinical development. As of mid-2020, 8 ADCs have been approved, 4 in hematologic malignancies and 4 for the treatment of solid tumors. The first approved was Mylotarg for relapsed acute myeloid leukemia in 2000. In 2010, it was withdrawn from the US market as a greater rate of fatal toxicity versus standard of care chemotherapy was observed in a confirmatory trial. In 2017, it was reapproved after a phase 3 trial with a fractionating dosing regimen, allowing to decrease the peak serum concentration and improve the safety profile. This demonstrates the importance of understanding the relationship between exposure, safety, and efficacy. I'm missing one slide. I'm sorry. More than 80 other ADCs are in active clinical trials. Here are represented ADCs presented in phase 2 or phase 3. A mass of ADCs are also in phase 1 trial. You can appreciate on this table the diversity of linker technology, the payloads, and targets. Now, concerning our ADC, named W0101, sits under development. So, it is a first-in-class antibody-drug conjugate designed for patients with solid tumor overexpressing IGF-1R. The insulin-like growth factor 1 receptor is a transmembrane receptor found on the surface of the human cells. It has been demonstrated to have anti-apoptotic properties, to increase the metastatic potential, and to confer resistance. It is implicated in several cancers, including breast, prostate, and lung cancers, with a significant difference of expression when compared to normal tissues. The payload is a proprietary auristatin derivative. It's a member of a highly potent antimitotic family that inhibits cell division by blocking the polymerization of tubulin. There have been implemented early high cytotoxic payload for ADCs, first in Adcetris and more recently Polivy and Padcev. The last approved ADCs wearing an auristatin derivative is Blenrep. The linker is a non-cleavable maleimidocaproyl linker. After internalization of the ADC target complex, the cytotoxic moiety is released within the target cell during the lysosomal degradation. A potential reduction of the off-target toxicity is therefore expectable from this class of linker. So the first point of attention for our ADC was the stability of our construct in serum plasma. It was done by measuring the drug-to-antibody ratio, the DAR I mentioned before, which is the number of cytotoxic molecules attached to the antibody molecule. It was investigated in vitro in serum plasma As expected from the linker, the construct was quite stable and goes from a DAR4 at start of incubation to around DAR2 and reach a steady state at around day 4. This is consistent with what is described in the literature for a maleimide linker, where the mechanism of drug release likely involves a retro-Michael reaction. Once administered, the relative proportion of each DAR species can change due to deconjugation process, and differential clearance resulted in a decrease in average DAR over time. When we investigated the stability of our construct in clinical samples from 2 patients at a potentially efficacious dose, we were happy to see that it was similar to in vitro sample stability. So in addition to selecting target cancer indication based on the antitubulin activity, the expression of IGF-1R on the surface of cancer cell is an important information. So as you can see on this table, immunohistochemistry allows to quantify the target on the surface cell, with the 3+ being the strongest expression. And on the first column is a lung cancer. Then you have a head and neck in the 2 next columns, and the breast cancer and also prostate cancer are good target indication for our ADC. In addition, a companion diagnostic is being developed with Roche Ventana that will allow to select the patient population that have more chance to have a response to our ADC therapy. The internalization of our construct and liberation of the cytotoxic moiety in the cells was evaluated in vitro by confocal microscopy using MCF7 breast cancer cells. In green, the ADC, in red, the lysosome, and in blue, the nuclei. It demonstrates that before incubation, as you can see, W0101, the green, is located at the surface of the cells. And after 30 minutes, W0101 colocalized with the red, the lysosome, and little remain on the surface cells. At that time, around 70% of ADC is already internalized. After 2 hours, the W0101 level decreased with almost no green color, mainly due to degradation in lysosome. The potential of W0101 to kill tumor cells was evaluated in a series of tumor cells expressing various levels of IGF-1R. Evaluation of in vitro activity demonstrated that cytotoxicity correlates with the target expression level. Indeed, on the cell line expressing high level of IGF-1R, the red and the purple here, W0101 displayed very potent cytotoxic activity, leading to almost 100% of cell death. In cells expressing lower level of IGF-1R, the orange, green, and yellow, W0101 was unable to induce 100% of mortality. No cell killing was measured in cell lines that do not express IGF-1R, such as the blue cell line. One of the biggest challenges in the development of ADC is to maximize the therapeutic index. I think there is an in vivo data where here we did the same as the in vitro. Mice were grafted with human tumor cells expressing different levels of the target. It showed that the 3+ MCF7 breast tumor model was very sensitive to a single injection. The 2+ here ovarian KOV3 model was less responsive, and the 1+ and 0 on the bottom, there was no activity in these in vivo models. I do not show it here, but W0101 also induced strong and significant anti-tumor, tumor growth inhibition on mice with docetaxel resistant tumor. So back to this slide. So one of the biggest challenge in the development is to maximize the therapeutic index. It can be done by several approaches. One of these is to optimize the dose level and the regimen. I previously mentioned the story of Mylotarg that after withdrawn was resubmitted with a fractionated regimen that did allow its reapproval. Kadcyla and Besponsa also have both two dosing regimens allowing to deal with their safety issues. Our phase 1 study was designed in order to evaluate two dosing regimens, allowing to generate data to support the selection of an optimized dosing regimen in a phase 2 expansion cohort. Development of mathematical models to quantitatively characterize the exposure efficacy and exposure toxicity relationships have been widely recognized as a successful strategy for model-based drug development and support decision making. Such models can help facilitate go-no-go decision in early discovery, but also in late-stage clinical development and regulatory approval. Preclinical anti-tumor activity of our ADC has been evaluated deeply in terms of pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, and pharmacodynamics in xenograft mouse model. We used all these data to develop a PK/PD model to characterize the W0101 antitumoral efficacy. This model describes the relationship between serum and tumor concentration of ADC and cytotoxic with the tumor size. We also use data generated during the monkey toxicology study in preclinical stage and build the pharmacokinetic toxicodynamic model to describe the major safety issue observed. This initial model was used to support the selection of dose range in the first-in-human. Finally, once emerging patient data arrived, they were compared to the prediction made with the former models and confirmed that patient data were as expected. Rapidly, a population PK model was developed with the human concentration and is updating all along the data are being available. This model was used to make the translation between mice and patient efficacy and anticipate a potential efficacious dose range. In addition, a new PK/TD model was developed with the patient data to describe the safety in these patients. These models were further used to simulate potential safe and also efficacious dose levels and regimen in patients. Understanding the anti-tumor activity of ADCs in preclinical models and predicting the activity in patient population have proven to be major challenges. Objectives of the present investigation was to translate efficacy of our ADC from the mice model to patients. Population PK and PK/TD models were based on the work of Shah and collaborators, who developed a model to quantify the impact of ADCETRIS concentrations on tumor growth in xenograft mice. This approach was used retrospectively for Kadcyla and Besponsa. As presented previously, several mouse studies xenograph with cell lines expressing different levels of IGF-1R from the 3+ to the 1+ were evaluated for their sensitivity to our ADC. In these in vivo mouse studies, various doses and regimens were evaluated. Total ADC and cytotoxic concentrations were measured in tumor tissues and also in serum. The PK and PK/PD analysis datasets were built using tumor size and concentration data collected in these studies. On the left, I represented here an overview of the tumoral volume over time with the best activity observed for the 3+, the green derived tumors. And on the right, you can appreciate the rich dataset of ADC concentration in serum over time at different dosing schedules. But the same was done for cytotoxic in serum, in tumor, but also for the ADC in tumor. The first model developed was the population PK model in mice. So here is the overview of the disposition of ADC and payload in mice as described by Shah and co-workers. Briefly, it characterized the ADC and payload PK in plasma on the left and in the tumor tissue of xenograph on the right. After administration of ADC, so you can see it in the red part. After administration of ADC into the systemic circulation, the ADC can distribute in the peripheral compartment on the left, can be eliminated with the CL-ADC arrow, or can distribute to the tumor compartment. Once inside the tumor extracellular matrix on the right, it can diffuse back to the systemic circulation on the left, or interact with the target on the surface of the gray cell, and be internalized to further liberate the cytotoxic moiety. This free cytotoxic can then bind to its target as represented by the K-on and K-off equation. I hope it's clear. I cannot show you with a pointer, but I hope it's clear for you. So this PK model was developed using a stepwise approach. First, the PK model was developed for the ADC in serum in red. Then the cytotoxic serum concentration were included in the model in blue. And finally, serum and tumor concentration of both molecules were modeled simultaneously represented in green. This is another way to present the PK model. Due to the complexity of this model and the large number of parameters, it was necessary to make some adjustment to the model published by Shah and collaborators. Some parameters were estimated, as you can see here in blue. In brown, which is not that clear, these are fixed parameters based on internal data, and some other parameters were removed from the model. The selection of the final model was based on the goodness of fit plots. These plots are used to compare the predicted versus the observed individual data. It was done for ADC and cytotoxics in serum and tumor. The black dots are the mouse concentration, and the linearity of the dots proves a good adequacy between predicted and observed concentration. The visual predictive checks, the VPCs, also allow to compare the predicted versus the observed concentration. The observed data are the black dots. The red and blue lines are the observed percentiles, while the prediction are the shaded area, the blue and the red. As you can see, the model well describes the observation with the overlap of the shaded area on the corresponding lines. So now the PK model was developed and validated. The model in tumor growth inhibition could be developed. This PD model is based on the tumor growth inhibition described by Simeoni. The first part of cancer growth on the left, the V1, and the second one of tumor growth inhibition by anti-neoplastic agents, the V2, V3, V4 until the cell death. So the V1, the tumor growth rate, is described as a function of tumor volume. It starts, as you can see on the equation, don't ask me to explain where is it, but there is a fast exponential phase followed by a slower linear phase. It leads to saturation in a growth rate once the tumor achieves the maximum carrying capacity. And once the tumor cells are exposed to the payload, where you see the arrow arriving just before V2, the tumor regression is induced and presented using a nonlinear killing function with the Kmax and the KC50. The V2, V3, and V4 are transit compartments describing the time course up to cell death. So here is the whole PK-PD model in mouse as described by Shah and co-workers, with an overview of adjustments made for the reference from the reference model. So as mentioned just before, and there are the yellow are estimated, it was the blue previously, the simplification and the fixed data with internal data in red and blue from the literature. You can see the connection between the PK and the PD model with the free payload liberated in the cancer cells that is coming into the equation of tumor regression. So again, we look at the VPC to validate the model, and we can see that the prediction well described the observation. Here, the observed data again are the black dots. The red and the blue lines are the observed percentiles, and the prediction are the shaded area. Whatever the level of expression of the target, and the first VPC is for the 1+ models, the second for the 2+ models, and then the last one for the 3+ model. The models well describe the observation. So now the model has been validated. The parameters were used to calculate the TSC, which is the tumor static concentration. This is a concentration where the tumor growth and the tumor death nullify each other. It leads to a static tumor volume over a period of time. In other words, it's the minimal target concentration to appreciate a stable disease. The TSC was calculated as described by Hadish, Berham, and co-workers. It is obtained by resolving the equation where the tumor volume over time is equal to 0 in the Simeoni tumor growth inhibition model. The resolution of the equation leads to the resolution of the equation here in purple, in the up of the slide. The author suggests that for an efficacious dosing regimen, both the peak and the trough concentration of the ADC should be above the TSC value. Therefore, once the patient's concentration of ADC were available, a population PK model was built. It is represented in blue on the left. The ADC concentration in serum patients was described with a 2-compartment model. On the right, you can see that using concentration data of 19 patients with doses from 0.07 up to 2.4, the model well described the observed data, with the blue dots at the time being the observed data and the black line the prediction. Again, these are the goodness of fit plots that prove a good adequacy between predicted and observed concentration. The blue dots are the patient concentration with in the X value the prediction, the predicted value, and in the Y the observed one. And here are the VPCs. So again, the observed data are the black dots, the lines are the observed data, and the shaded area are the simulation. So now this model is validated by the VPC and the goodness of fit. It can be used to simulate PK in patients. The objective was to reach a dose level and a regimen where the concentration of ADC in patient serum was always above the TSC, all presented here in purple. I exemplify here 2 cases where in both cases the median serum concentration in red is always above the TSC. In the first case on the left, for a percentage of patients the individual are in gray, there is a period of time where the ADC concentration are below the TSC, while in the second case, 100% of patients are always have their ADC concentration above the TSC. It demonstrates how the PK inter-individual variability might impact the efficacy. And here is the outsource graph of all the simulation where we can have an idea of the percentage of patients having their minimal concentration above the TSC from 0 to 100%, depending on the dose level for the x-axis and the regimen and for the different colors of the graph. Of course, the most frequent is the dosing regimen, the black one, the lower the efficacious dose is. So we all agree that a safe and efficacious dosing regimen is critical. Therefore, this data of potential efficacious dosing regimen in patients need to be put in parallel with safety and then trigger the need to develop such a model. A semi-mechanistic PK/TD model was developed based on the work of Lina Freeberg and colleagues. The first part in blue is the POP PK model in patients that I just discussed before, and the second part in orange is a toxicodynamic model describing the physiological processes that determine the cell count in the circulation. So the first block on the left is the proliferation in a progenitor compartment. Then the transit 1, 2, and 3 in the middle is the maturation of cells represented by several transit compartments as it takes time. The arrow coming to the bottom, the KL, I think, is the elimination from the circulation, and you have an homeostatic regulation, which is the arrow with the P coming from the circulating cells back to the stem cell, a kind of retrocontrol. The drug effect is induced on the model here on the first part on the left, on the stem cells. Then it do impact the cell proliferation. So again, the goodness. Attends. Sorry. The mouse is too fast. So here, as you can see, we used the data from 21 patients with doses up to 2.4. The model was described the observed data with the blue dots, I think they are blue, for the observed data, and the black lines, the prediction. Again, the goodness of fits, the linearity proves that the prediction well describes the observation, and the visual predictive check with the shaded area overlapping with the lines demonstrate good prediction. So we could use this model to predict the cell count in our patients, and I exemplified here for one dose, 3 different regimens, regimen 1, regimen 2, regimen 3. The individual are the gray lines. It was simulated, I think, for 1,000 patients, and there is a mean in blue in the blue line. And then you can indicate to the model the characteristic of the dose-limiting toxicity, the DLT, as defined in our clinical trial. Here it was the patient experiencing a grade 3 more than 7 days and the grade 4. And you can have this type of graph, which is generated with all the simulation that computed the percentage of patients experiencing the DLT, depending on the dose level, again on the x-axis, and the regimen for the different lines. Again, the most frequent is the dosing regimen, the black one, the lower the safe dose is. So in summary, our PK/PD department focused on characterizing the safety and the efficacy of our ADC in order to support the selection of safe and efficacious dose level and regimen in patients. This was done through the development of several models. First, an efficacy PK/PD model using xenograft mice data to define tumor static concentration, a safety PK/PD model in monkey tox species to support the first-in-human and comfort the team once the initial clinical data came in. And then, once patient data arrived, a POP-PK and a PK/TD safety models were developed, allowing further simulation to anticipate safe and efficacious dose regimen in patients. The result of the two models can then be seen conjointly. At this point, discussion with clinicians are requested to well-define the endpoints, meaning what is the acceptable percentage of patients experiencing a DLT on the right, and the percentage of patients reaching the tumor static concentration on the left. Depending on that endpoint selection, a dose range can be defined across regimens. The common area between safety and efficacy represents a potential therapeutic index, which guides us in our decision process for the selection of safe and efficacious dose regimen for further clinical trials. This model will be updated with coming patient data in ongoing and next clinical trials, allowing to fine-tune the prediction of safe and efficacious dose regimen. Now I want to acknowledge all the people that work on that project in the pharmacology team, analytical team, CMC team, the PK/PD team, and also the project team. And I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thanks for that, Judy. Very interesting presentation. Let me quickly just share my screen so people know again where to ask the questions, right? Which you can simply type in the Ask a Question box. We have a couple of questions coming in already, so I'll just read them out for you, Judy, and then you can take it from there. So the first question, I didn't see the preclinical safety PK/TD modeling. How was it used to predict safety in patients?
Yeah, indeed, I did not present the PK/TD model in monkey, but it was developed, as I mentioned, with the tox data from the 6 weeks study. Some preclinical studies were also specially designed to have additive data, and so the same model as in patient was built with the PK model with a 2-compartment distribution and the Friedberg model with the maturation of cells, transit compartment, and feedback. And actually, it was used in parallel. The POP-PK model was built using the monkey PK data, but with an allometric scaling in order to anticipate what would be the PK in patients. And then, based with that, we could simulate what could be the cell count in patients. And then we use that to determine the dose for which we would have too much DLTs and the dose that we didn't want to go above.
All right. Okay. So there was another question, and the question is, what radio element do you plan to use to develop the CDX?
Attends. What radio element? Attends. Can you? Ah ouais, c'est bon. What radio element do you plan to use to develop CDX? I'm not the good person for the companion diagnostic. I'm very sorry. I just know that there is a companion diagnostic. I know that it do not recognize the same epitope than our ADC, but that's the only thing I know. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I guess then if you don't know, you don't know. That's perfectly fine. So there's a couple more questions coming in. So is PD efficacy driven total ADC or payload concentration?
Is PD efficacy driven total ADC or payload concentration? It's linked. This is a payload that will have the efficacy, but it's driven by the ADC concentration. As we do have like a DAR of 4 cytotoxic per ADC. So this is linked. Both cytotoxic do have the antimitotic activity, but ADC allow to drive it to its target.
All right. Okay. Another question. How many of the mouse models did you get pharmacokinetic data for? Was there any difference in PK in serum or tumor across the different expression levels?
That's a good question. How many of the mouse models did you get your PK? I think it was on the slide. I don't have it in mind. Let me check. There was a lot of I have to say, I'm very sorry, but there was a lot of mouse. We have tested the 1+, 2+, and 3+ for the xenograft mouse. C'est quoi les questions? Subset from mouse models did you get? PK serum or tumor? I'm not sure there should be some difference. I can't tell you, but there should be difference with the tumor concentration of ADCs based on 1+ and 2+ and 3+ due to the expression of the IGF-1R.
Okay. The next question. You estimated antigen concentration using the SHA model. How did it compare to the antigen levels determined via flow cytometry?
I don't know. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not the modeler. I resume.
Oh, okay.
I will try to get the correct answer and to answer.
Yeah, exactly. So we have the
really
people that ask the question registered. We should have the email addresses as well, so we can get back to any questions we don't have answers to by email. So we'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. Modelers should have been with me today, but it's. We will have a few days of holidays before it's reconfined, so I will come back to you with the answer.
Okay. So actually, a question also from my end. I'm curious, this drug antibody ratio, to what extent is this part of the, let's say, regulatory approval procedure? Is that something that needs to be set in stone, or will this vary by batch? And how is that then described to the regulatory authorities?
There is not that much, to my knowledge, there is not that much in the regulatory. We should take care about it because indeed it's an indication of the stability of our construct and it will liberate cytotoxics in the systemic circulation. That's the reason why we did follow it in patients. But I am not sure there is that much regulatory guidelines on it, at least for a serum. But for the CMC part, there is a strict requirement to be around the target DAR target.
Okay. And I think there is maybe the last question. Is it possible to deliver a natural phytomolecule as anti-retinoblastomic drugs, ocular drug delivery? I don't really get the question, but maybe you get.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say yes. ocular drug delivery. I know there is some specific ADCs that do have ocular toxicity, so maybe it's because there is a good targeting of eyes. So maybe we could take care of this advantage. Any kind of molecules can be target. Here the strategy is to use strong, potent antimitotic agents that do have high toxicity, and used alone they really have a narrow therapeutic index. The aim is to increase it by using target therapy, but you can use I think you can use any types of molecule. For the moment, ADC are mostly used in oncology, but it can be used for other indications.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, if there's no further questions, let me just pull up this one slide that we were missing from the presentation.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No
Thank you. I think it was the slide for Pharmapandium that they nicely prepare for me. So they exemplify on this slide what we can find using the Pharmapandium software, which is a very rich software where you can find information of any product that has been approved. So here for Mylotarg it was even better, because it's the first approval was in 2000, and all the dossier was scanned and not searchable, and Pharmapandium team has made it searchable all along the document, which I think you all know can save hours of work. So it was really good. And as you can see, you can have a preclinical, clinical, and even post-market data, and it's a really useful tool to benchmark rapidly your compound.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying this.
Yeah.
And maybe there's one last question that came in, and we still have some time, and that's was there a difference between predicted efficacious dose using serum ADC concentrations as driver in the Simeoni model versus the tumor payload concentrations as the driver?
This is the tumor payload. Good question. The tumor static concentration was calculated for the I forgot to mention it. It's a good question. We calculated the tumor static concentration for both the ADC in serum and the payload in serum and tumor, and there was a good prediction for the both. But finally, we kept the serum ADC concentration because it's the metric that we generate from the clinical data and can be used to predict the efficacious dose regimen in patients.
Okay, thanks for that. With that, I would just like to comment once you can that the presentation, let's say this presentation is recorded, right? So if you just follow the same link that you followed to get to this this live webinar, you can watch this presentation as well. So if you found it interesting what we've just discussed and would like to share this link with your colleagues, that would of course be appreciated, so they can basically watch the same presentation. I would like to thank Julie for this very interesting presentation, and I would like to thank the audience for the very interesting questions as well and the discussion. And hopefully we'll see you again soon for related follow-up webinars as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for setting up again this webinar. This is a very good tool, the webinar. I think in the last month it was good. It will be good in the next month, but I hope we will still have a face-to-face congress to keep the social part of the scientific exchange.
Sounds good.
Thank
you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Have a good day. Bye-bye. Stay safe.